Hi everyone, welcome back to As We Say in Argentina. We're now on episode 5 of this series of short videos where I explain the meaning of expressions that we use in our everyday talking in Buenos Aires that refer to elements of our culture such as TV shows, humor, politicians giving speeches, or songs, especially tango songs, that have influenced our everyday talking in such a way that we use them all the time without sometimes even realizing where they come from, and they are very hard for people from abroad to understand unless you know the background from where they come from, right? So this is what I do in this series of short videos. So as you may know, it has been election season in Argentina. We had presidential election happening last week. And because of that, this time I've chosen a word, a very simple word that has had a lot of different, many times not very good meanings in the history of our culture, which is gato, right? As we know, gato translates as cat, nothing too big, with this word. We can talk about little kitties all the time, no problem, but that is not exactly why I've chosen it. It turns out that when people use this word, you really need to be aware of the context in which it's being used. Let me explain the evolution through history of this word and it will make more sense. Turns out that in the 1920s, nobody knows why, people started calling gato to the men who would go to brothels and hire prostitutes. Why? Well, because there is another word used in lunfardo, which is a slang in Argentina, in Buenos Aires especially, which is gatillar, it's a verb. And gatillar literally translates as to trigger, but this is not the meaning in lunfardo. In lunfardo, gatillar means to pay. So the gatos in the brothels were the men who had the means, the money, to pay for the prostitutes. They were the ones being able to gatillar for the prostitutes' services, right? So that was the first time in the history when the word gato had a different meaning from a little kitty, right? Now, somehow in the history, then that evolved into the 1970s, and in the 1970s, people started calling gato to the women who were working as prostitutes, or the women who would use their charms and their good looks to simply seduce men and have them pay for things they wanted, like fancy cars, fancy meals, big houses, whatever, clothes, anything. They were being like seductive to men because these were wealthy men that could afford whatever they wanted to have in their lives, right? So gato then began to be used to describe women, in a little bit of a derogative way. So it wasn't anymore about the men who would pay for their services, but the women who would actually offer their services in a way from these wealthy people. Now, in the 1990s, a whole new meaning of the word gato became popular, and the origin of this new meaning comes from the prisons. It turns out that, God knows why, prisoners started calling gato to the newly arrived prisoners to jail. And those new ones were the ones, or are the ones, who usually had to do all the kitchen service, like serve dinner, serve lunch, and then do dishes. And the older prisoners would call these new ones gatos. So during President Macri's administration, people from the opposition started calling him gato as a way to insult him and treat him as a punk, right? Or as somebody who is a low-class criminal. And they would use the expression Macri gato every time in protests. They would sing little jingles with that expression. They would write, paint walls during protests saying Macri gato. You would see the expression in the streets. And, it became very popular again, and they started making jokes about him and Macri gato, Macri gato, Macri gato, right? It turns out the campaign of Mauricio Macri, instead of, feeling offended by that, they decided to make a joke out of that. So he would call himself the gato now, and he would make jokes about saying, yeah, I like being called the gato because a gato is an animal who is known for having 7 lives, right? So the word was all over the place, and the expression Macri gato was all over the place for the last year until last Sunday, when President Macri actually lost the election. Anyway, how is this all related to tango? Because you know I have a thing for tango and I try to put things together as much as I can with these videos. And now you're going to find the answer. Check out this song. Listen to it, please.
En el bosque de la vida hay un bípedo sin pluma que camina entre la gente en favor de su disfraz. Que se muestra cuando hay buena, pero en la mala se fuma, que se tira en la liviana y se encoge en el cinchar, que se apropia de lo ajeno, que se viste con espuma, que aparenta estar sobrando y no tiene para empezar. Gato, este bicho es tu retrato. Gato, dibujado con carbón, gato, del sombrero a los zapatos, gato, se denuncia tu ambición.
So it turns out in 1937, Homero Manzi wrote this song about this person who is pretending to be what he is not, and he's a bit of a scammer, and he calls him Gato. And we cannot say today that people started calling President Macri Gato because of the song by Homero Manzi. We cannot say that people in jail started calling the new punks Gato because of Homero Manzi's song, but we could imagine that the tango culture had a footprint into this word, you know, and because of the song we may have always been used the word gato as a bit of an insult or a derogative way to call other people who are usually referred to as low-class criminals, right? So this is why I believe the tango has had an influence in this expression that you bump into all the time. Every time now you hear somebody saying, you know, the word gato, try to take a close look at the context, because you could be talking about a prostitute, you could be talking about a man who is hiring a prostitute, you could be talking about a woman who is simply being very seductive because he wants to get something out of the men's wallets, or you can also be talking about a punk, or you can be talking about President Macri, or you can be talking about a little kitty somebody has, right? So in this case, context really matters. Thank you very much once again for watching these videos. As always, feel free to comment, feel free to share, visit my website, tangomaria.com, where you can have all the information about my activities in Buenos Aires, my itinerary for next year, the group trips I host in Buenos Aires as group trips, or the private immersion tours, anything you need there. And you can also watch the previous episodes of As We Say in Argentina. And if you have any questions about something you heard people talking about and you don't understand what it was, please feel free also to text me, or private message me, or simply comment down below on this video, and you can I will make my best to try to communicate that to you too. Thank you very much. See you next time.